All right, class, so we're looking at the structure of the atmosphere, and there's two ways that meteorologists describe the structure of the atmosphere. That's based on the gaseous composition of the atmosphere, and the second way is based on the temperature trends. And so this is what we're going to take a look at now. The structure of the atmosphere based on temperature trends. There's layers of the atmosphere that are based on temperature trends, and that's how we describe the structure of the atmosphere. One of the ways. Okay, and so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the lowermost layer of the atmosphere. That's called the troposphere. And so the temperature trends, and so here this is warmer temperature at the surface and cooler temperatures over here. And so notice that as we go up into the atmosphere, the temperatures are cooling, and you knew that already. If you drive up a mountain, if you're in a hot air balloon, if you're in an airplane, whatever, you know the temperatures get colder as you go up into the atmosphere as the altitude increases. So this lower layer of the atmosphere, lowest layer of the atmosphere based on temperature trends, is called the troposphere. Okay, and so just some points that we'll make out here. This is the lowest layer of the atmosphere. When talking about it in terms of temperature trends, this is where all weather occurs. So all weather is abbreviated WX. So WX means weather. So this is where all weather occurs. And this is, as you go up into the troposphere, the temperature is going to decrease with altitude. All right, I'm going to apologize now because this diagram is going to get kind of messy. So I'll apologize for that now. So the troposphere is the lowest layer. At the top of the troposphere, then temperatures become pretty constant with height. We call this the tropopause. The tropopause is a transition. It's a transition zone between the troposphere and the next sphere called the stratosphere. And in the tropopause, temperatures remain pretty constant with height. So temperatures are constant with altitude. So anytime you see the word pause here, and you're going to see it two more times, anytime you see the word pause, the temperatures are going to be constant with altitude. Okay. So we go up through the troposphere, reach the tropopause. The tropopause temperatures are fairly constant with height. And then we get into the stratosphere. So you'll notice that in the stratosphere that temperatures are increasing with altitude. Okay. And there's a good reason for that, and we talked about it a little bit earlier in this chapter. And that's because remember that you've got this layer of ozone. Ozone is O3, that is concentrated in the stratosphere. Okay, and so that ozone absorbs the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Okay, and I think I have in the notes that one thing that you'll hear pretty often in this class is that whenever any object absorbs any form of radiation, that object is going to warm up. And so when we put the actual subjects into there, whenever any object, ozone, absorbs any form of radiation, ultraviolet radiation from the sun, the object, the ozone, is going to warm up. And therefore, in the stratosphere, temperatures are going to increase as altitude increases. Okay, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Okay, at the top of the stratosphere, okay, we've got another area where the temperatures are constant with height. This is called the stratopause. Okay, and in the stratopause, again, it's a transition zone. So you're transitioning from the stratosphere into the next sphere called the mesosphere. So this is a transition zone, and in that transition zone, temperatures are constant with altitude. I told you this was going to get messy. Sorry about that. Okay. So the next layer of the atmosphere, based on temperature trends, is going to be the mesosphere. Okay, and in the mesosphere, I'm not going to pretty much all I'm going to say about the mesosphere is that the temperatures are once again decreasing with altitude. And as Forrest Gump said, that's all I have to say about that. Okay. At the top of the mesosphere then, and before we get to the next layer called the thermosphere, we come up with the mesopause. The mesopause is once again a transition zone. You're transitioning from the mesosphere into the thermosphere. And in the mesopause, okay, wherever you see the word pause, temperatures are constant with height. Temperatures constant with height. Or altitude, I guess I should use. It should be consistent. Okay. Temperatures constant with altitude. Now, what I want you to notice, we talked about the structure of the atmosphere based on gaseous composition. Notice the homosphere goes from 0 kilometers to 80 kilometers. That correlates pretty well with the combination of the troposphere, the stratosphere, and the mesosphere. Okay, so in these layers where you got good atmospheric circulation called the homosphere, that's where we find the troposphere, the stratosphere, and the mesosphere. Okay. Above these three layers is now we're getting up into the heterosphere. Okay, and we're talking about it in terms of temperature trends. Here we are getting into the thermosphere. Okay, so the thermosphere is up here. And once again, the temperatures in the thermosphere are increasing with altitude. Okay. And there's got to be a reason that the temperatures are increasing with altitude. Remember, down in the stratosphere, temperatures were increasing with altitude. That's because we had this layer of ozone that was concentrated in the stratosphere, and ozone absorbs the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Okay, in the thermosphere, remember we got this layer of oxygen. Okay, so in this particular layer here, oxygen, just O, also absorbs the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Okay, so as a result, any object that absorbs any form of radiation is going to warm up. Okay, so when we talk about the structure of the atmosphere based on temperature trends, lowest layer is called the troposphere, where temperatures decrease with height. Then we hit a transition zone called the tropopause, where temperatures are constant with height. The tropopause is a transition zone between the troposphere and the stratosphere. In the stratosphere, temperatures once again increase with height because ozone that is concentrated in the stratosphere absorbs the sun's ultraviolet radiation. At the top of the stratosphere, we hit the stratopause, a transition zone between the stratosphere and the mesosphere. It's a pause, stratopause, so the temperatures are constant with height. When we reach the mesosphere, temperatures are once again decreasing with height, okay, or altitude. Then we hit another pause, the mesopause. It's a transition zone between the mesosphere and the thermosphere. And once again, with pauses, the temperatures are constant with height. And then at the thermosphere, above 80 kilometers, temperatures are increasing with altitude, primarily because the oxygen is absorbing the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Okay? So that pretty much covers chapter 2. And so now we're ready for our first quiz.